1873, the Adelaide Gaol held both male and female prisoners. Female prisoners were mostly there for the crimes of theft, prostitution and drunkenness. One of the most fascinating cases at the jail, of course, is the trial and execution of Elizabeth Woolcock. Elizabeth is the only female unfortunate enough to have been found guilty of murder and then suffered execution afterwards.
Quite a sad story in that at the age of 7 she was severely beaten, strangled and raped by a passerby. Many years later, after surviving the death of her father, she heard that her mother was still alive and living in South Australia, up at Moonta. And Elizabeth then decided to move back to Moonta. Thomas, in 1873, took severely ill. A few weeks later, Thomas died.
Thomas Woolcock met his death from poisoning administered by Elizabeth Woolcock. The inquest was held in Moonta, and the inquest jury returned a finding that Elizabeth was guilty of murdering her husband, and she would then have been taken to Wallaroo Jail and then transferred to Adelaide Gaol pending her trial in the Supreme Court in Adelaide. Elizabeth didn't have a fair trial as we would define a fair trial today. She was represented by Dr. Kaufman, who was a newly trained lawyer from London. The prosecutor was the Crown Prosecutor, Mr. Richard Andrews QC. She wasn't permitted to speak on her own behalf, and her defence counsel didn't call any witnesses for the defence. The only witnesses that were called in the case were witnesses for the prosecution. Now in 1873, of course, it was also an all-male jury, and so it's likely there would have been some bias towards a woman who was accused of murdering her husband. The transcript of what was actually said in court follows. Elizabeth Woolcock, you have been found guilty after a lengthened and most careful inquiry of the awful crime of murder. It is now my duty to pass sentence upon you. The jury have recommended to you mercy on account of your youth, and that will be my duty to forward that recommendation to His Excellency the Governor, in whose hands the prerogative of mercy is reposed by our most gracious Sovereign the Queen. I have now only the solemn duty to perform of pronouncing the sentence of the court, which is that you be taken from the place from whence you were brought, and there hanged by the neck until you are dead.